I am Ginna BB Gordon, host of Arts and Letters for Art Presence Art Center in Jacksonville, Oregon. These live stream events were initially created during the height of the pandemic and continue on, perhaps forever. We're excited to reach out to the wider audience to talk about books, art, and ideas with folks outside of Jackson County. My guests tonight are Dr. Frank De Luca and his collaborators, Ken Gregg and Nancy Bardos. We're supporting the launch of a very timely and needed book called Kindness, a Guide for Humans based on the Enneagram. You don't need to know anything about the Enneagram to appreciate the wealth of loving information in this book. Dr. De Luca will share some key points about the whole idea of understanding each other in new and meaningful ways, and about kindness as a way of life. His goal is basically a kinder world, person by person. Here is the Frank De Luca portrait for Kindness by Nancy Bardos. We'll talk to Nancy about these portraits in a bit. Dr. De Luca has been facilitating classes and workshops in self-awareness since 1976. For most of those years, the Enneagram has informed his work as a marriage and family therapist, a leadership coach, and corporate consultant. Now semi-retired, Frank provides guidance and training to several local nonprofits in and around Jacksonville, where he lives with his partner, Ken Gregg. Creative projects and writing have become a central part of his life, including the wonderful posting of poetry for passers-by to see in the front windows of the 1850s former saloon where he and Ken live. This is one of my favorite poems in Kindness. You could say we are each a piece of work. You could say we are each a work of art. Both are true. And now the real Frank De Luca joins me. The first thing I would appreciate, Frank, I would love to start the show with your reading of the first poem called I Didn't Know.
Sure. I did not know the rude cashier's son was expelled from school yesterday. I did not know the careless driver who pulled out in front of me just got word that his wife was in the ICU. I did not know my sarcastic remark had hurt my friend so deeply. I do know that I easily forget how tender we all are. I do know that erring on the side of kindness never hurt a soul. Ginna, might I just continue with the preface, which will...
Please.
Yeah.
Yes.
What I want to say is that I wrote this book in such a way that you don't have to read the whole thing. And that that poem is really all you might need to know about what this book is about. And the short preface I wrote kind of describes how it came to be that this book became about kindness. I began Kindness, a Guide for Humans, more than 3 years ago. There were many stops and starts along the way. I thought writing about the Enneagram would be a fairly straightforward process, since I had been studying and working with it for over 30 years and teaching it for 12. I assumed I would write this as an educator, a person with advanced degrees in psychology who knew things about people. But through a process of personal undoing, which writing a book can do to you, I discovered I was writing this book from my head. The book was asking me, boy, to write from my heart. This revelation shocked me at first, but it did not surprise me. I had always believed that if we could wake up to how tender we all are inside, we would tread more lightly. We would be kinder to ourselves and to one another. Years of studying, teaching, and living with the Enneagram has confirmed this belief for me. I asked myself, what do I want readers to take away? Do I want them to know about the Enneagram, or do I want them to know how they can be kinder to one another? It was with this second intention that I wrote this book. I decided to use my experience of the Enneagram as a tool for cultivating kindness, rather than as a lesson in psychology. So I wrote this book, not as a teacher, but as a person who wants to encourage you to get to know the people in your life better. See life through their eyes, not through yours. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Could you explain to us or give us a few words about the Enneagram, even though the book is not about the Enneagram?
It's filled with Enneagram, but it's not about it. It's an odd thing. You know, to simply say the Enneagram is a tool that lets you understand yourself and people better. And, you know, the word is a little strange, Enneagram. It's two Greek words together, Ennea, which means 9, and gram, which is a drawing. So it's a drawing that kind of has 9 features to it. And shortly we'll see a picture of the Enneagram symbol. So it's become a personality typing system. Some people are familiar with Myers-Briggs and other typing systems. This is a little different, where it comes from and the depth and the breadth of what it offers as far as the wisdom, not just of what type of person you might be in this personality structuring, but what you can do with that, how you can grow both personally, spiritually, professionally, in any way you want. So that's my simple answer to what the Enneagram is.
That's good enough for me. Can you give us a little bit more about why you wrote this book?
Because I hadn't seen one like it. You know, in teaching the Enneagram, I taught it in live action, so it was really listening to stories, and I didn't really talk a lot about theory. In follow-up, we did, but I wanted to have something to give to people that can give them some of the basic understanding of the structure of the Enneagram and descriptions. The books that are out there many of them written for professionals, and they're pretty dense, almost like textbooks. So if someone says, well, can you give me a book on the Enneagram? I wouldn't see them again if I told them what I thought they might want to read, because it was kind of intimidating. So I decided I would write this book for people who know the Enneagram and people who are new to it, and try to take out all the jargon, take out theory. It's full of the theory of the Enneagram, but I don't talk about it. It's all in the stories. And so I made this a storybook so that you can actually experience what these teachings are rather than I tell you what they are. I chose the method of show and not tell.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to talk about Ken Gregg now. He will come on in just a few minutes, but here is Nancy's portrait of Ken. Ken was drawn to photography at the age of 10. His parents gave him an old box Brownie camera, and in less than a year, he had built his own darkroom. His fine art photography has become permanent decor in luxury hotels throughout the world. He has published several pictorial books, most recently, A Year in Jacksonville. Because of his wide-ranging talents, he is also a website designer and a book designer and a Photoshop expert. Here is the real Ken Gregg. Welcome,
Hi.
Ken. Hi.
Hi, good to be here.
I am so glad to have you here.
Yep.
I really love the banner that you gave us, and I would like to show the publications, your book covers here, and I would love to, from left to right, have you give us a couple of minutes of description about these various publications and your path in book design.
All right. Well, it starts on the left with my first published book within a year after graduating from college. I did not get a degree in art or photography. I actually got a degree in business administration because I knew I was going to be an artist, but I wanted to have experience with the business side so I could know how to work it as a business. Beginning with Santa Barbara, La Tierra Adorada was a book about my hometown, Santa Barbara, photo pictorial. That was in 1971, right after graduating from college, within the first year. The thing about a photographer, the photographers who are producing or having produced a book of their images, by default will be involved to some degree in the design and layout of that book. It's just by nature, you have to, because it's showing your photographs, your artwork. It was very important for me to start that right at the beginning, and I had a person help me with the text. He was my next door neighbor. He was an English teacher, and I asked him to come in. So that was really my first collaboration, was my first book. The next one over is one of, over 20 North Face catalogs that I was involved in. That same year in 1971, I went to work as the catalog photographer for a startup called North Face. And I brought in my college roommate who was a graphic designer. And so again, from the get-go, I was working with somebody else, and I did most of the photography of North Face catalogs. We did 2 a year for a decade, at least as long as, and then I moved on after 10 years. And working together with my graphic designer partner to produce these catalogs for the first 10 years of the existence of North Face. And then I retired from that just because I was getting burned out on the same things: tents, parkas, sleeping bags, backpacks, even though they were designed differently. And we traveled, around America, Canada, Mexico, Europe. I just burned out. And so I spent about 20 plus 30 years becoming an art photographer and developed this market with high-end hotels for artwork. The middle image then is a catalog of an exhibit, of a retrospective of my artwork that I held in Conroe Valley, where I lived at the time. And the next one over is a 200-page hardbound book of my family history. It was basically stories with text and photographs, but it had such an interesting storyline, beginning with my great-grandmother who emigrated from Lebanon in 1906 with 7 children, one of whom was my grandmother. And it's laid out very simply and carefully with text and images and artifacts, etc., from the family. And then the last one grew out of my love of taking photographs of Jacksonville on, I would call it street scenes, which I had never really done before. All my work basically never included people. So I learned how to photograph people doing their thing on the streets of Jacksonville. About 3 years of collecting photographs, I decided it was time to put it into a book to kind of commemorate what Jacksonville is like today, because there's a dozen or so books on what Jacksonville history was like, but nothing about what it's like today. And what they all reflect, as you can see in these covers, was a simplicity of design. And that's just my style. It's been that way since I was 10 years old and taking my first pictures. And it carries through not only on the cover, but the style of my photography and the design of any publication I've been involved with.
Fabulous. That is so perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, next I would like to talk about Nancy. She will be with us in just a few minutes. But here is her self-portrait. Nancy was also hooked into the world of visuals through photography as a young adult. Decades later, when the iPhone arrived, she ditched what she called her big girl cameras for the one that she could slip into her pocket. Hooked again. As life sped by, she says, she tried her hand at drawing and painting, and in her words, magic struck once more. With the advent of the iPad and the Apple Pencil, she fell for them too. She believes we should never leave our longings unattended. Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
So, As a little bit more of your bio, would you tell us a little bit about your favorite mediums? I love all the pictures behind you, and I think they tell a little bit of a story. But I would really like to know how you have translated all your artistic endeavors into working with an iPad only. Well, pretty much only.
Yeah, well, for this project, it was only the iPad.
Okay.
There are many times when I really feel I have this need to use paint or glue or ink or sandpaper. I mean, you can't do that in bed pretty much. But the iPad, for this project, it was, it's so portable, this iPad, and I could get my tea at 4:00 in the morning sometimes. And just, I could hardly wait to start. I don't know, there was something about this project. I just was excited to do every part of it. And so it's not messy. The iPad's not messy. It's portable. It's fun to use. And here's the best part. It has an undo button.
Good point. Very
The
good
best
point.
thing, when
Yes.
you're painting, there's no undo button. So
Right.
anyway, so that's why I chose the iPad for this. I just thought it would be the right medium for it.
And so describe just a little bit the path of these things behind you. Are these paintings? Are they digital prints? What are they?
Yeah, they're combinations. These over here, I moved into the artist studio space here at Art Presence, and I just cut up a bunch of small 7x7 pieces of paper, and I just started doing paint and collage and just seeing what might come up. And this one right here happened to be something that I really liked, and I had quite a few people make comments online about. So I actually had it enlarged by a fine art printer in the Valley, and so it's the largest thing I've had produced. It's so anyway, they're
Is
all
it a G clay?
Yes, it is.
Is that what they did?
Yeah.
And this
36.
is, excuse me, this is in the show down in the Art Presence
is.
right now.
It is, yeah. So it's fun to have the images from the book on one side of the gallery, and then my teapot, it looks like an exploding teapot or something. But anyway, so there's photographs, there's paintings, there's, and this is from an long ago meeting at Frank and Ken's, when Frank was explaining the Enneagram, and that is about the tender hearts. And it shows a tender heart, and it says, remember this, all humans have one. And that has stuck with me ever since that long ago meeting. And then to have his book be culminating around kindness, it's just, it's like.
Beautiful. Thank you. I would like to just give you a little bit of feedback. This is from Bill Gordon. Last night I spoke with my wife about Frank and his new book, Enneagrams, and tonight's presentation. Having made the perhaps too hasty assumption that I am 8 and Mary is 9, we panicked at our fire and water and wondered if our 28 years of marriage and companionship has all been a great mistake. Alas, of course not. It simply made it even more fun and interesting. We send our love to you all and wish you all good luck and happiness. So I love that. And I also have something for Nancy from Rhonda Hull, who says, Nancy, your work is amazing, and I love this collaboration of talents. So may I show the portrait of Barbara right now, and have you, Nancy, just say something about it and the collaboration before we move on to Frank's next reading?
Well, first of all, I didn't really know exactly what I was getting into when I said yes when Frank asked me about would I be interested in working on this project. But you know, Frank is very charming and persuasive. So I said, yes, I would like to do this, even though, of course, I didn't know what I was doing. But so I learned eventually there would be 9 images of the personality type behavior, and then there would be portraits, and they were photographs that Frank sent over to me just up the street. And this photograph of this woman, I mean, this is the image that I did, so it's not the photograph, but I don't know, there was something about this woman. I just fell in love with her. And I just thought she looks like the kindest person I have perhaps ever met or seen. And so I was glad I could capture it. At least I felt like I captured it pretty well in this portrait. But yeah, I fell head over heels for her.
Perfect. Thank you. So now I would like to go back to Doc DeLuca.
Thanks, Ginna.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And I would love to have you read the part about seeing people.
Yeah.
And then I would like to discuss the Enneagram and how it relates to kindness.
Well, that's what this reading is about, because, as I said, I didn't intend to write a book about kindness. I intended to write a book about the Enneagram, but it just kept drifting in that direction for a number of reasons. And maybe this will explain some of it. Most of us assume that if everyone thought like us or acted the way we wanted, all would be well. Sadly, it's not that easy. The real work is not only to understand our differences, but to embrace them. The Enneagram is the best tool I know for accomplishing this. What I've come to appreciate about the Enneagram is its holistic perspective. It illuminates both the light and the dark aspects of who we are, our wisdom and our quirks, our highest potential, and our clay feet. When you see people in their wholeness and not focus on just one of their actions or traits, you appreciate who they really are and understand why they act the way they do. Your perception changes. You see more. Your heart opens. You begin to appreciate that there is more to a person than what you see on the surface. Through the lens of the Enneagram, you see the beauty in people, their gifts, and their good hearts. And you also see how goodness and good intentions get derailed and why. When you lead from your heart, people feel it. They feel seen, not judged. They relax. And as they relax, they reveal more of their true self. They lighten up. They laugh more. You meet human to human in the most wonderful way. This is kindness. So I began to see that kindness is not really just a kind act, but it's a way to be with people where you're willing to see the whole person. As you said in the opening quote, you could say that we are each a piece of work, and we are. And you could say we are each a work of art, and we are. And if you can hold both of those when you're with people, people feel that. And I believe this is really the root of kindness.
So let's talk for a moment I'd like to talk about collaboration. And I would like to ask you first, Frank, how you wrote this book and what did you learn about, what did you learn working on this book with 2 other people, both creative minds with their own ideas? And how did that come together for you?
Oh, it was fun. You know, I think I learned that certainly I could do something much better with other people than I could do on my own. And particularly with this kind of book, the Enneagram is such a difficult thing to really grasp. And so much of it is not through words, but you kind of have to feel into it. So it's if I did a book by left brain only, it would just be words. But I needed to use the right brain as well. Thus, Ken and Nancy. And where do I find an artist? Oh, she lives 2 doors up the street. Where do I find an art director for the book? Oh, I live with them. That's how it is in Jacksonville anyway. You don't have to look very far. So I just asked Nancy, and we worked together. And I think what I learned and what was so remarkable is that I started things off, but with this talent, people just found their own way. Nancy brought to me images of a type. She didn't know a lot about the Enneagram, and I don't want to tell her too much because she was so good not knowing. She just picked it up intuitively. And she would show me an image. I thought, oh, you understood this type better than I ever could have explained it to you. And I would kind of change what I wrote based upon what she drew. And Ken would change a format and let's say, put in a lot more space. And I thought, oh, I don't have as many words I can use here. I got to really tighten up. So it was really a back and forth process of Nancy and Ken doing as much as I was as far as the creation of this. And the great thing is we all knew what we were going for without knowing what it was. And I think the qualities we worked with was simplicity, kindness, and how to be kind to the reader. So they wouldn't have to look at something ugly and wouldn't have to have too many words. So I just know the product came out much better than I could have if I just wrote a book.
And so let's just talk for 1 minute about, I'd like to see the cartoon of the one type.
Oh, thanks.
And yeah, well, it just sort of worked out that way. And I know that you know a lot about the one type.
I do.
I will announce to everyone that Frank, yes, is a one. And just just give me a 1 minute synopsis of a one and why this picture is so meaningful.
Enneagram ones are really focused on what's right in the world, which means they're always going to focus on what's wrong. They need to fix things that are off, whether they're asked to do it or not. There's a lot of good in the type one about having this wonderful idealism and this wonderful deep vision of how really life could be, how we could all be at our best. And there's an incredible integrity to the ones. We tried to do cartoons, and Nancy was brilliant with this. That's why I asked her to do it. Is that there's the humanness here. There's the shadow side. Kind of, she doesn't look like she's a real pleasant person, but this type one can do great things in the world. And through the course of each chapter, you begin to start with something that might think, keep her away from me, to I really want to know who this person is. And that's what the cartoon shows.
Great. Nancy, I'm going to talk to you next about this same question, talking about collaboration and collaboration in general, if you will, but what was it like for you to collaborate on this project with Ken Gregg and Frank De Luca?
Well, first of all, I signed on because I thought it would be a really unusual, creative thing to do. It just sounded sort of interesting, even though I didn't know much, as Frank said, I didn't know much about it. And because I knew them and they are just down the street, it seemed like, well, that seems pretty good. So I just said yes. And the thing was that these guys are brilliant to work with. And if I had not said yes, I would have missed this magic, because there was magic happening. And these emails and these images would fly back and forth in the ethers to our respective houses. And I don't know, it was an unusual adventure, only it was unusual in a different way for me. But these guys were just amazing to work with, and I had the best time. So thank you.
I would like to stop for just a minute and just fit in a little question to Frank here from Jean Lukemeyer, who asks, when you came to the end of your writing and prepared to launch your book, did you feel you had fulfilled the premise and the promise of your preface?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's
Perfect.
it.
Perfect
Thank you,
answer.
Dean.
Thank you very much.
And you helped me with the opening of the book, Gene. We'll talk about that later.
Okay, Nancy, I would like to talk to you about cartoon type 4, number 10 on our list of portraits or things to look at. We're going to show the type 4 again when I talk to Ken in a moment, but I wanted to look at the type 4 from both of your perspectives. This is the type 4, and what was it? The type 4, Frank, for just a second, would you like to give me 10 seconds of the type 4?
Well, what the caption under this in the book says, just seeking authentic connections. Fours have this sense of really wanting to get to the true things in life. What is authentic, what is real, even if it's good or it's bad or it's sad or it's tragic, they're just in for the whole thing. And they have what great imaginations, as this image really portrays. Some people see them as really living in their own heads and their own minds and their fantasy of themselves and of life. They don't really necessarily see it that way. And I think Nancy captured that beautifully in this.
And Nancy, were you thinking about all of that when you did this cartoon?
Well, I do think that this one was sort of an amalgam, or is it amalgamation? What's the word I want?
Amalgamation
anyway,
sounds good to me.
Okay. Anyway, I think I saw bits and pieces. Maybe Frank sent me something, maybe Ken sent me something, maybe I, in my browsing of a lot of different types of media, put these different parts together and came up with this person in this unusual outfit with a golf umbrella, which came from my history personally, and having them in their own universe right there. And they were going to be quite unusual and unlike somebody else walking down the street in full sun. So it was a fun image to put together.
Great.
But I think it came from disparate pieces.
Sure. Before I move on to Ken and with this same discussion about collaboration, I just want to say one thing about the type 1 to Frank from Denise, who says about that image. This is great. Denise says, I'm a type 1 and I love that that image because the eyes were seeking justice and right doing while the lips are shaped like hearts.
Oh, very
great
nice
observation. Isn't that wonderful? That's great. All right. So Ken,
Yes.
let's talk about collaboration.
Okay.
And what you perhaps felt about this whole thing. And then I have another really interesting question for you, but just collaboration in general or collaboration with these two people.
Right. Well, as from my previous portion here, I started collaboration with my very first publication, and always have. I don't know working on a publication without one other person. And so as Frank and Nancy began to work on this, Frank the writing and Nancy the drawings, and because I'm skilled in desktop publishing program, they would hand me materials, text and images, and I would kind of, pour it into pages on the screen and in a proper sequence for what was being talked about. And that went on for, I don't know, a year or so. But then kind of the tipping point came when I went from just helping Frank and Nancy, put the text and images into this book form on a computer, to actually taking ownership of my participation in it. And it occurred when I saw the whole book, once most of the initial material was in. and realized that I had to join them as a fellow collaborator, stakeholder, and bring my skills and my particular style to it, which I'll show you a before and after couple of pages.
Okay. So before that, and this is kind of pertinent to the whole design of the book, give me a 1-minute description of how you ended up with with kindness as the title.
Okay, well, the title started out years ago with actually a piece of material that Frank used in his classes. It was called A Field Guide to Humans. It was kind of like we wanted to take the approach like you're studying, birds of the Western United States or something. And then it narrowed down to a guide for humans, and he started to include a subtext, cultivating kindness based on the Enneagram. And as his writings developed, as he explained earlier, in terms of it became more and more about kindness than it did a book about the nature of the Enneagram typing system. And it reached a point where, and I was playing with the cover design, and it reached a point when he gave me some new text that was more kindness oriented. And as I was putting it in, I remember it. I just sat back and I turned and looked down on my desk where I had printed out the latest copy of the cover. And I said, wait, this isn't a field guide to humans. This is about kindness. And so taking what was the subtext keyword, cultivating kindness, and moving it to the top because it had to be. And these moments of aha come with any artist, regardless of what your venue is, your skill is. And it just comes that way. It just comes out of somewhere. And that was it.
I mean, just quick, I've got to say this because, Ken, this is why the intuition and how we work together, it wasn't all mine. Because I looked at the string, Ken got to these things sometimes because like a field guide to kindness was too long, so we cut field guide. It was all because of graphics. And then when I got to kindness, it was too long. But when I looked at it, I said, you just changed the title of my book. I was like startled. It's like, at first, how dare you? And then I realized, oh, he understands this better than I do. I better shut up. That's the title.
That's great.
Right. That was it.
Okay, so I have about 1 minute, Ken, for
I'll
us.
be fast.
Okay, let's discuss the cartoon of type 4 from your perspective, and then the 2 pictures of the typesetting of that spread.
Well, the type 4 is just as Nancy described. It's just classic. It's beautiful. It's about a type 4. It's colorful. It's whimsical. It captures all the elements of 4s. They oftentimes have really big scarves, etc. If you want to go ahead and put up the 4, up above is the first page of the type 4, and in it is all the things Frank wanted to do. He wanted to have a color associated to each type. He wanted to have kind of a mantra there in script writing that might look like the writing of a 4, very individualistic. Give a background to the cartoon and so on. The right page I did first off and kept it pretty much because I could just tell it breathes. It had a lot of white space. The bottom, but then through the last year, we began to peel away the layers and said, wait a minute, it's too distracting from Nancy's illustration. It just needed to be simplified. It's too busy. It's too crazy. It doesn't match the right side of the page. So the bottom is what we ended up with. Just a little bit of indication of the color of the type as a frame. And then Frank put in just seeking authentic connections instead of repeating I must be me mantra. And I polished up the right side with a couple of additions that Frank wanted to do about different names for the types, individualistic, romantic, and artist. And the next one. So again, here up above on the top left was before, and on the top right was before. This was the spread, and we wanted to get in colorful, whimsical graphics. Thumbs up, things to do, to be kind to a 4. Thumbs down, red, don't do, and the last one was a caution. And then at the bottom was what the gift is. So it was kind of like a waiter coming, or somebody giving you a gift on a tray and so on. And the right was just text and bullets and kind of a breakout box that wasn't quite developed. So the bottom, we began to simplify it and just using colored arrows, again,
it's
sticking
beautiful.
with the color theme. And then the last page was, instead of just more and more text, I knew Frank was a really good poet, and a friend of his said, where you need to get more poetry in here. So we just 86 that right-hand page, the last page, because we wanted something that would sum it up energetically. And so these poems Frank wrote at the end of each type, and we could really put a splash of the color of the type there.
Yeah.
And so you can see the difference between the spread above and the spread below. The
Totally
significant
different.
improvement.
Thank you very much. That's just fabulous. So Frank,
Ginna.
we're going to focus now for a few minutes on the number, a specific number. Frank has chosen the number 7, and he's going to read a little bit from the chapter on the 7. And I would say that in total we have about 4 minutes for this. So we'll read from it first, and then we will share the 3 images.
Okay, great. Just quickly, each chapter has about 14 pages, and it begins with an image, and it goes through things like, it's all personal. A quick thing about, is this some type that you know? And I talk a little bit about people I know of this type in my life and in my experience. And then most of it is, though, listening to stories. So I think if we have the first image of the 7, do we have that there, David, of the person in the car? It's a great image Nancy did, and this is kind of, 7s love adventure. They love new things. They love to keep discovering what they don't know. And it's a beautiful picture of that. And then the next one, I think I have an image of one of the portraits that she did. And all the portraits are people that I know. Well, out of 27, I would say about 20 of them, I actually know these people. They were clients, friends, colleagues who have identified their type. They were willing to give me a photo of them for Nancy to work from. And she tried to say disguise them. I don't know, but it's the essence of that person. So a type 7, the rule would be, life is an adventure with unlimited possibilities for enjoyment. If a little is good, more is better. And I'll read just a little bit of, we call her Ginna here, and what it would sound like. So I created stories and words and the voice of each type. She says, okay, yesterday I planted my vegetable garden, met my best friend for lunch, and helped set up a science fair at my son's high school. I got home and decided to prepare my keto cauliflower mac and cheese casserole for the monthly neighborhood potluck, which I never miss. I make sure I am never bored. I'm trying to get my family to join me on our next year's Rotary Club trip to set up sanitary water systems in Ecuador. Fortunately, my work as a healthcare organizer gives me plenty of flexibility to squeeze in as many fun things to do as possible. I hate it when people get too needy or demanding of my time. I want to be free to do what I want to do. I don't understand why people let themselves feel sad or down. What a waste when there are so many wonderful things in life to appreciate. I think it's important to remain positive and keep your options open. I'm always ready to go. Sign me up. Why would anyone want to limit the amount of joy they can experience? So that's a sense of a type 7, not really aware of themselves, they're just in it. Okay, then I go to another portrait and I call this person Jimmy. And I talk about when each type kind of wakes up and they see that they're kind of living in a pattern that may not be the healthiest, they have choices. And here's how Jimmy explains it. By always trying to keep life right, I didn't see that I was letting others deal with aspects of life I didn't want to. I left it up to my wife to discipline our children, handle the bills, keep track of family birthdays, and more. When she asked me to give up my occasional night out with the guys, I accused her of trying to put limits on me. It took me some time to see that I got along well with everyone as long as I got them to join me in my plans, in my adventure, my party. But as I've grown, I'm not as afraid of feeling down or not having as many options open to me. It's sobering, really, to realize I was seeking one high after the other. That is a superficial way to live. It's much better to experience it all, the highs and the lows. Now, most people would not know this, but I get anxious and restless when I'm held back or dragged into situations that are too heavy for me. I'm lighthearted by nature. I'm trying to learn how to slow down, appreciate everything that comes my way, and to pay attention to other people's needs. I would like to be less afraid of introspection, but the inside frightens me. It is much easier to follow the next shiny object. I'm a work in progress. And I close the 7 with a little poem that I call it the wisdom of the 7. Too much freedom is not a good thing. Sometimes it's better to sit in your cage and sing.
Perfect. Wow, this hour has gone by so fast. We're coming to the close of our hour, and I would like to say a couple of things before Frank has the final word. I would really like to thank you all for attending this event. My thanks also go to Ann Brooke, David Gordon, and all the Arts and Letters guests. It is a real joy to me to present authors, especially those whose intent is to make the world a better place. And Frank, we would really love to hear from you for the final word on kindness.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read just a portion of what I call the final word about kindness after I've gone through the 9 profiles. I believe we all have the same human desires: to be safe, to be seen, to be connected to others, and to protect ourselves from physical and emotional pain. We all want a sense of peace and contentment. We simply go about trying to fulfill these desires in different ways. We all have tender spots, emotional wounds, and sensitive areas for protecting. Recognizing this awakens compassion, and kindness is the innate response. Being kind is not the same as being nice. Most of us can be polite or civil when needed, but being truly kind asks more of us. It asks us to put ourselves in the mind and heart of another, to see life through their eyes. People are having a hard time all the time. They're struggling to get through life the best they can. Remembering this keeps us all on the same playing field. Admittedly, kindness is not always easy. For me, there are people I encounter who rub me the wrong way. Sometimes I just can't seem to open my heart to them. It's easier for me to be angry, critical, or judgmental, holding tightly to what is wrong with them in my eyes. In these instances, if I have the presence of mind, I take a breath and say to myself, maybe I should give them a break today. Maybe I should give myself a break today. I can't seem to find that kindness. I'll try again later, tomorrow. But for now, can I at least do no harm? So this is what I offer, and through the great work with Nancy and Ken, I feel proud of this endeavor, and that, I hope that whatever if you see this book, I hope it does speak to you in some way. You don't need to know the Enneagram to be kind to people, but it really helps. It helps to understand where people are coming from. And it helps if you get to know yourself, because I think that the best way that we can really be kind to one another is to get to know ourselves and to see what goes on for us and where we need to be compassionate to ourselves. And the Enneagram is this beautiful tool to help you understand yourself, the emotions to take over, and learn how to study yourself, how to be real, how to be present, and how to choose behavior and know when passions take over, and decide where you want to put your energy. And Nancy and I were talking just before this with Ken as well. She noticed that she had been frustrated or angry, and she said, "Oh, kindness, that's right." And I think it's for all of us that way. I can be either angry and upset, or I could be kind. What do you think? It's a choice. So thank you so much, Ginna and David, for creating this wonderful forum for us and all the work you have put into this 1 hour. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for being here. This has really been the most extraordinary evening. We appreciate your all coming. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. So great.
Bye.
Bye.